Disney's resident magician, M. Night Shyamalan, writing about old people, and Indiana Jones becoming James Bond? All this and more coming up now on Real Time, Real Talk. It is March 31st, 2014, and this is Real Time, Real Talk, where we take a look at 5 of the biggest and or most interesting movie stories of the week. Now, the last time I did this, I divided everything up into 3 sections. There was the actual headlines, there was Trailer Corner, and then there was a movie review. Basically this time I'm going to try a different method. I'm going to try combining all 3 into one video and just see which format works better, both for me and for the viewers. So, this might just, obviously this is going to end up being a fairly long video, but, let's just get into it and see how it goes. I think that's just the best thing we can do right now. So, with that said, here are the headlines. The Last Crusade and the First? Have you been fearing what many have been implying as the inevitable Indiana Jones 5? Well, my friends, today your prayers have been answered. It was confirmed this week that there are no concrete plans to bring Harrison Ford back for another Indiana Jones film. That said, sources for the Latino Review report an idea floating around of turning the Indiana Jones franchise into one similar to James Bond. This would mean different actors taking up the role of Indy over a long period of time, much like how James Bond began with Sean Connery and moved on to different actors to play Bond. No confirmation yet on how soon we will know whether or not this idea will stick around. Now, I know I said last week that I'm straying away from rumors, and I even broke that with the last episode. I broke that promise. However, the big news here, the big actual for sure news here, is that there will be, or at least it looks like there will be, no Indiana Jones 5 with Harrison Ford, which to me is a good thing. I mean, I actually did not hate Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as much as everyone else did, but with that said, I don't think there's any place more for that series to go, for that line of films. However, I do love this idea, and I don't know how trustworthy the source is, but I do love the idea of Indiana Jones becoming like a James Bond style reboot series, if that's an actual term that I just used. I like this idea, and some of the names that have come up, Bradley Cooper is one of them. I think he would be great. The other name escapes me, but they're both very interesting choices, and I think if they play their cards right, they could have a really great James Bond style series going on here, and it could be a lot of fun. Moving on with one. In light of the recent tragic death of actor Paul Walker, many have questioned exactly how the already partially made Fast and Furious 7 will proceed without one of its key stars. But shooting resumed this week, and director James Wan has a plan to finish the film. It was revealed that Wan intends to complete Paul Walker's unfinished scenes using 4 actors with a very similar build to that of Walker's. The deceased actor's face will be digitally placed onto those of the stand-in actors, and voice effects will be used to complete Walker's dialogue. Wan said that he feels confident that fans will be satisfied with the outcome of this move and will ultimately embrace the movie that is now being put together. Let me just say, first and foremost, I am not a viewer of the Fast and Furious series. It's just something that's never appealed to me. I've never had a reason to watch it. And as far as Paul Walker goes, I kind of feel like an ass because literally my only exposure to him was the film 8 Below, the one about the dog sled team in Antarctica from 2006, I think. And I was not a fan of that movie. I thought it was mediocre. Unfortunately, that was my only exposure to the guy. That being said, of course, any death is a tragic event. especially an early death like this. It's a tragic event, and I know that Paul Walker was beloved, and he was a very key part of this franchise. And honestly, I think this is a good idea. I like that Paul Walker... I like that they didn't shy away, because, they really could have just rewritten the whole movie so that he just randomly dies or gets, goes somewhere else where he's no longer part of the plot. They could have shied away from this, but they said, no, we've got this story, we've got this complete film that we still need to make, so we're just going to go ahead and do what we can technologically to finish Paul Walker's part of the film. I think it's a smart idea, and I think it's very bold on the part of the filmmakers, because they're still dealing with scenes of someone who did tragically pass away, and I think that they'll be able to make a more complete, a more understandable film with this plan that this plan that they've come up with. I see washed up directors. After largely losing the trust of his audience with critically panned films such as The Last Airbender and After Earth, it seems M. Night Shyamalan is going back to his roots in order to hopefully win back his viewers. Details were leaked this week involving Shyamalan's newest film, Sundowning, a low-budget psychological thriller which appears to be harkening back to the director's thriller days, the days of The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and so forth. The new film is said to be centered around a single mother who drops her 2 kids off for a visit at their grandparents' house, where things, quote-unquote, go very wrong. Many believe the title of the film refers to Sundowner Syndrome, in which older people have extreme reactions to the sun going down. However, it's difficult to speculate, as Shyamalan himself has been fairly shy about saying or inferring too much about the project on social media. Another fact we do know is that the film has begun shooting this past week, and it stars Kathryn Hahn and Ed Oxenbould as mother and son. I will say this, M. Night Shyamalan, he is a very interesting filmmaker. He's a very polarizing filmmaker, because his early films obviously are beloved. Myself included, I'm a huge fan of The Sixth Sense. Doesn't really hold up, to today's, film standards in terms of plot holes and stuff like that and whatever. But honestly, I do like the guy, and I do know he's made a few mistakes. The Last Airbender, I did feel, was especially an insult to me, because I'm a huge fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. But I'm a fan of Shyamalan's thriller days, the days of his earlier films, and so this gives me a lot of hope. I'm very hopeful that he's going to be able to take this film, Sundowning, which does sound interesting, and take it in a new direction. At this point, I don't know if it's going to be worth it, because there's so many people out there who just have completely given up on the guy, and understandably so, but I think we'll just have to see. When You Wish Upon a Magician. Disney is probably the last film studio anyone would expect to shy away from a project involving magic, and although they are certainly not doing this, they are in fact enlisting the help of a professional. The company announced this past week that they would be enlisting the help of award-winning magician Derek DelGaudio to produce and offer additional input on an upcoming project about the history of magic. No further details were released about the film. However, DelGaudio does have recent history with Disney, having worked as an artist with Walt Disney Imagineering earlier this year. He's better known, however, for co-starring in Nothing to Hide, a New York magic show directed by Neil Patrick Harris. The film, meanwhile, will be co-produced by Justin Springer, whose previous work includes Tron Legacy and the Tom Cruise sci-fi film Oblivion from last year. No director has been announced. As I said, it would be unlike Disney to think that they couldn't handle a movie about magic. However, if like I said, there's no details no concrete details about the film other than it's about the history of magic. If we're talking professional magic, then I think having a professional on board is definitely the way to go. And Derek Delgadio, I hope I'm saying that right. I probably am not. If not, I apologize. He's definitely someone I would trust in a role like that. I'm not familiar with his show. Nothing to hide, but I don't know. Just looking at his credentials, looking at his history, and the fact that he has worked with Disney before, I think this could be interesting. And I'm just someone in general who loves the subject of professional magic. I love sleight of hand and card tricks and stuff like that, and that's exactly what this guy is known for. And I would honestly be really interested in a movie about the history of professional magic. I'm one of the few people last year who liked Now You See Me. That was one of my favorite films last year, and hardly anybody even acknowledged it after it came out. But I think this kind of looks interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to more details about this project. Plot of the dawn of the long-winded movie titles. New details were released surrounding Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the sequel to the 2011 reboot of the Planet of the Apes franchise. It was revealed by Empire magazine that Matt Reeves, director of 2008's Cloverfield, is taking the directing chair from Rupert Wyatt, who directed Rise of the Planet of the Apes. In addition to this, star Andy Serkis broke news of plot details for the film, stating that it will center around humans and their interactions with the now blooming community of apes, which have taken over. Serkis also suggested division among the apes when they discover a small band of humans fighting to survive. This does still leave out a number of key plot details, however this was all Serkis had to say regarding the film. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes opens on July 17th, and it stars Serkis along with Gary Oldman, Judy Greer, and Cody Smith-McPhee. I was actually a fan of the first of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I didn't think it was great. It was nowhere near perfect. But I liked it. Although I'm finding out more and more I'm one of the few people left who actually still likes James Franco, but that's beside the point. Honestly, I've always been kind of skeptical of, even though I did like the first, even though I did like Rise, I've been skeptical since I heard that there was going to be a sequel, since they said that they were going to make this a series. And I'm just like, how much farther can you go before you catch up to the original Planet of the Apes? How much more can you dredge out of this origin story until people stop caring? And honestly, I'm sure people will stop caring, because Rise of the Planet of the Apes did not do excessively well. It did fine, but I don't think it did well enough to where people are honestly going to care about it for very much longer. And that's just, I don't know. I'm sure I'll see it, and I'm sure I'll not mind it, but I honestly don't see how much farther this reboot franchise can go. Alright, so now let's just move right along to Trailer Corner. Our first trailer of the week is Tom Cruise's new sci-fi film. It's the second trailer for his film Edge of Tomorrow, which is going to be released on June 6th. Check it out.
The invasion will fail. We lose everything. I die within 5 minutes of landing on that beach, along with every other soldier.
Now, the director of this is Doug Liman, who directed The Bourne Identity and Jumper. I've not seen either of those, although I've heard I'm not missing anything with Jumper. But because I haven't seen them, I know I have no room to speak. However, this film does seem questionable. It is an interesting concept. I think someone described it as Groundhog Day meets sci-fi, and of course that's really true. But I don't know. It seems like it's going to be a very bloated project, and unless they have some really great writers, I don't know how they're going to handle this plot. But on the other hand, I am a Tom Cruise fan. In general, when he tries, he's great, and I love him in sci-fi because Oblivion came out last year. Is one of my favorite films of last year, and so I'm kind of mixed on this. As far as the characters, as far as the acting, I have high hopes, but as far as the concept and where they're going to take it, I honestly don't know what to say. Next, we have the first look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, produced by Michael Bay, and that will be released on August 8th. Check it out.
But heroes are not born. They're created. That's what your father and I were trying to do. Create heroes.
Now, first of all, I know it's not directed by Michael Bay. It's only produced by him. It's directed by someone else whose name escapes me. But that said, it does honestly look like something with Bay's name attached. It does look like he had a lot of influence on this. And it does kind of harken back to the Transformers, where he's taking this classic cartoon series from the 80s and making it grittier, making it darker, making it more akin to the real world. And that's not a horrible idea if you do it right. And there are some things that this trailer does right. I like the idea. I like what they're doing with Shredder. First of all, I'm a big William Fichtner fan, so I'm thinking he's going to do great. I like him as a villain. And looking at they have the Shredder costume in there, which just looks great. Honestly, and this speech that Fichtner has in this trailer about the city needing heroes, and sometimes you have to create heroes. It's intriguing. It is. So that's definitely done right. As far as the turtles themselves, because they show up at the end of the trailer and talk to Megan Fox. That's an entirely different topic, but as far as the turtles themselves, they really kind of look kind of grotesque. I mean, I don't know how exactly you would do CG turtles in the first place, although they were done much better in that movie TMNT from a couple years ago. But I don't know. I'm just these turtles kind of make me uncomfortable. But honestly, it is just the first look, and we're gonna have to obviously see a lot more before opinions can truly be formed. So I'm gonna hold off on making an actual opinion, but at this point, I'm skeptical. Next up, one that was just a little interesting to me. It's a film starring Mark Ruffalo and Keira Knightley. Looks like an independent project. It's called Begin Again, and it's going to be released on July 8th. Now, the first thing that struck me about this trailer was the fact that two of the stars are Adam Levine and CeeLo Green. Now, I know that they both have acting credits. Adam Levine was on, I believe, American Horror Story last year. But I just kind of feel like it's no coincidence that they were both in the same movie. They were both involved in The Voice, and they're both just kind of trying to break out as actors. And I don't know how I haven't seen Adam Levine act before. I didn't watch his American Horror Story stint. CeeLo I have seen act before, and he's he's all right, but I think that it'll be intriguing to see these two, on the big screen. I'm a huge Mark Ruffalo fan, so as soon as I saw his name attached, and also on a film about the music industry, I really like those films. Those two things sold me, and it's definitely an interesting story. Not sold on Keira Knightley, mostly because my biggest exposure to her was the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, and she was kind of iffy. But the film looks charming enough, and like I said, I tend to like films about the music industry. Hell, I'm even one of the few people who enjoyed that Mark Wahlberg's film Rockstar from 2001. I can't explain it. I find that film really enjoyable. So I think this film definitely has a chance, and I'm honestly looking forward to it. So yeah, I'm definitely hoping I can get around to seeing that in July. Next up, we have a trailer that is our first look at Dwayne Johnson's Hercules, coming out on July 25th.
Are you only the legend, or are you the truth? Behind the legend. Now, tell me, who are you? I am Hercules!
Now, this is being directed by Brett Ratner, who is famous for directing the Rush Hour trilogy, which I didn't mind. Some people don't like it, some people love it. I'm just kind of in the middle. I didn't mind it. They're films that I could watch again, but I'm not going to actively seek out. Chris Tucker was really only my major problem with those movies, but Chris Tucker is a major problem. He also directed X-Men The Last Stand and Tower Heist, who I know both of those films have pretty bad reputations, especially X-Men 3. So that it kind of tips me in the direction of uh-oh. And also the fact that Brett Ratner, at least in part of his career, was a music video director, and also the fact that it stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who I tend to not like in films. It just kind of seems like it's going to be a little bit shallow. I'm hoping that the action is interesting enough, because I'm honestly really skeptical about the plot and the characters in this movie. It doesn't look good. And our final trailer for the week is another sci-fi film starring Channing Tatum and Mila Kunis, and it's the second trailer for Jupiter Ascending, coming out on August 18th.
I just need to know what in the hell is going on.
I think we might have stumbled into a war with one of the most powerful dynasties in the universe.
Why is this happening to me?
You are royalty, Your Majesty.
You are in for a surprise when you find out what I do for a living.
That's not what you do. It's what you are.
I'm sorry, I actually got that date wrong. It's July 18th. I was looking at the wrong thing there. As far as the film goes, to me it looks like the typical chosen one scenario. There's an unwitting and unlikely chosen one thrown into this great big conflict with minimal training and just expected to all of a sudden do great things. It just seems like a plot that we've seen a million times. Perhaps I'm being a little bit too harsh, but for me, the film's gonna really have to do a lot, especially considering its leads. I am a Mila Kunis fan, but I prefer her more in comedies. My last exposure to her was Oz the Great and Powerful, where, oh god, and I actually liked that movie, but her Wicked Witch of the West was it was very hard to watch, and it just, yeah, I had some issues with her character. Although, I don't know. I don't know what to think of her in this movie. And Channing Tatum, again, I really only like in comedies. He was in 21 Jump Street, which I was a big fan of. But as far as this goes, he looks... He doesn't even do much in the trailer, but he just looks bland. I don't know how to explain that. But we move on to the directors are the Wachowskis, and they have a questionable track record. The Matrix trilogy, of course, especially the first film, very solid. However, they also did Cloud Atlas, which I thought was a big piece of shit. I thought that movie was just a train wreck. And again, so this movie for me has a lot going against it, but I've been surprised by movies like that, so I'm going to hold off on judgment until I see it. But just know that I am quite skeptical of this. So that wraps up the news portion of Real Time Real Talk this week. With that said, it's time for the movie review of the week. And this week we have Russell Crowe in Noah. I'm sure you can already tell by the tone of my voice that I am just ecstatic about this film. But first, for those of you who are not familiar, Noah is a retelling of the story, a reimagining, I should say, of the story of Noah's Ark. It's the early days of man. Man is wicked. They've fallen away from God. So God tells Noah, one of the only righteous people on earth, that he's going to flood the world and eradicate humanity, except for Noah and his family, who are tasked with building a giant ark where they're going to preserve 2 of every kind of animal so that life can begin anew after the flood. And that's the basic plot of the movie. But then they start adding all this typical Hollywood bullshit, and it becomes one of the most infuriating cinematic experiences I've had in quite some time. Let's just move into it, and excuse me if you hear some clicking in the background. I actually took some notes on my phone during the movie. I was one of the only people in the theater, and there was just so much about this movie that was just pissing me off that I felt the need to take some notes so I remembered everything I wanted to say. First of all, I'm having trouble figuring out where to begin. Oh, let's begin with the fact that the Ark was helped, was built in part by rock giants, rock monsters. Yeah, Noah's Ark was built in part by rock monsters. Just think about that sentence for a second. Now, the context in the film is that when in the fall of man, the fall of Satan, there were fallen angels that God cursed by having them fall to earth and being encased in stone, so that they just have these giant, weird stone bodies. And they were tasked with helping humanity build society. But once humanity started to grow wicked, the angels turned against them and basically grew very bitter to them. But Noah was able to convince them that he was righteous and, right with God. And so they help him build the ark and they help protect him from his enemies. That makes a little more sense, but still, giant rock monsters called the Watchers helped. Did they even say this sentence out loud when they were writing this? It frustrates me so much, and I can forgive biblical inaccuracies. I could give a shit about biblical inaccuracies. I really could. Because just like any other adaptation, you're going to change stuff in order to make it a more entertaining story. And the Bible honestly leaves out a lot of details. And so you're going to need to fill in those points. But this movie just handles it so poorly. And, oh God, I'm still struggling on where to. I'm going to have to turn to my notes here. First of all, acting. This movie stars Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly, Emma Watson, Anthony Hopkins, among others. Emma Watson and Anthony Hopkins are the only ones who seem like they want to be here. Anthony Hopkins is just having fun with his role. He plays Methuselah, who is Noah's grandfather, who Noah and his family go to for advice and for blessings and what have you. And Emma Watson plays Shem's wife / Noah's adopted daughter, because they find her like basically dying and go back and they heal her and they raise her, but she becomes Shem's wife. They're the only two that actually give any resemblance of giving a shit about this movie. Russell Crowe is bland. Jennifer Connelly is mostly bland except for when she is way, way, way overacting. It's just like for most of the film she's just bland, and then all of a sudden there's this one scene where she just tries way too hard for like 2 minutes, and then she goes back to being bland. All of Noah's sons are bland. The unnecessary villain is bland. Just no one seems to want to be there other than the two that I mentioned. Yeah, I also forgot, in addition to the rock monsters, there's a fucking flare gun. I'm not even kidding. One of Noah's enemies has a flare gun. Or like it's this like cannon thing that shoots flame. Not like a flamethrower, but like they shoot like fireballs basically. Sorry for that, hit my headphones. But it's just it's another one of those things. Like, did they even think about that when they were writing the script? And I guess I apologize for this being such an unorganized review. It's just there's so much about this film that is just that I wish I could talk about, but this video would be hours and hours long. It's just, I guess I'll get into one thing is the writing in general is just very lazy and kind of half-assed, because you have plot devices that are just kind of dropped on you, and you're just accept, you're supposed to accept it. One happens with Emma Watson, because when they find her, she's injured, and she's injured where like her womb would be, and so it's to the point where she's unable to bear children. And again, that's just kind of glossed over. It's just kind of hinted at, and it's just sort of implied. And then halfway through the movie, Emma Watson comes up to Noah and is basically just like, you need to find a better wife for Shem because I can't bear children. And she just bursts into tears, just going on and on about it. And it's halfway through the movie. It's like it's right before the flood, and we're just like, it's just like, oh, okay. Oh, by the way, she can't have children. And I mean, like I said, it was hinted at before, but very lazily and perhaps too subtly. I mean, I understand subtlety, but that was a little too much, to the point where if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't have picked up on it until now. And even when she's given that whole spiel, it's still somewhat vague for a while. And then for some reason, and then later on in the film, she's blessed and able to bear children again, and she gets pregnant. But that's just kind of glossed over how that happens. I guess Noah's wife went to Methuselah and basically asked him to bless Emma Watson. But it's very much just kind of glossed over. And it's like, you'd think that'd be a very important plot point, Emma Watson being the new, like, mother of the rest of the world. but stuff like that. And I greatly apologize that I'm just kind of ranting here, but this film, it's so incoherent. It's so confused about what it wants to be, and the moral is confused. The characters' reactions don't make any sense, and it's just a very frustrating movie. I have not been pissed off in a movie theater like this in a long time. I was just sitting there glaring at the screen for like the last 2 hours of this movie. Okay, maybe not that long, but at least the last like hour and a half of this movie, because it's like 2.5 hours long. And now let's talk about the big reason why I'm considering applying the word hate to this movie. Because, like I said, I can forgive inaccuracies. I can forgive wooden acting. I can forgive some of the just confusion that happens, and I would have just passed it off as a mediocre, quote-unquote epic movie. But then the second half comes along, and Noah becomes a psychotic baby killer. Again, you heard correctly, Noah is a psychotic baby killer. What happens is, as I said, halfway through the movie, Emma Watson discovers that she's pregnant. And this is right in the middle of the flood. And Noah basically freaks out because he believes that God did not intend for the human race to be restarted. God instead intended for the human race to just be completely wiped out, no trace of it whatsoever. And the only reason that Noah and his family survived is so that they could preserve the wildlife. And then once that's done, they will die. Noah and his family will die out, and humanity will be extinct. And that's what God wants. So when he discovers that Emma Watson is pregnant, he basically says, okay, if it's a boy, then we won't let him reproduce, and he will be the last man on Earth after we all die out. If it's a girl who does have the ability to produce offspring, then I'm going to kill it the minute it's born. And from that point on, he becomes obsessed with this. It's to the point where the behaviors that he exhibits are akin to that of a serial killer, to that of the bad guy in a slasher movie. And it's to the point where Jennifer Connelly, Noah's wife, comes up to him at one point and basically says, look, if you go through with this, we are going to disown you. We will die out, and you will die hated by everyone that you love. And Noah's reaction to this? Stone face. And just no reaction at all. Excuse me. And then after the flood, Emma Watson and Shem, her husband, this is when she's still pregnant, decide to build a raft so they can escape from Noah and actually have their baby in peace. Noah finds out, and he sets the raft on fire. This is our hero, everyone. This is the man that we were supposed to follow, that we're supposed to support. And he's doing this. How exactly does that work? How are we expected to root for this guy when he is just this psychotic, just madman? And then the babies are born. It turns out that they're twins, both girls. Noah comes after him wielding a knife and is about to kill them, and all of a sudden has this revelation of, oh wait, they're beautiful. He said at one point, I have nothing but love in my heart for them, so I'm not going to kill them. And actually, this turns out this is what God wanted, that humanity should just be restarted. And so after that, it's like it never happened. He's just hailed as this hero. and the one who saved all of humanity and saved the world. And I was sitting there like, no. You were about to murder your own grandchildren minutes after they were born. How do you walk away from this being a hero? If I were part of that family, I would have still fucking disowned him, because for someone to even think of that, and it's not, and also, if God wanted the human race to be extinct, why would he allow Emma Watson to get pregnant in the first place? Not to mention, I just thought of this. Back, the scene that I mentioned earlier where Emma Watson comes to Noah before the flood and says, you need to find another wife for Shem because I can't bear him children. Why would that matter to Noah? Why would that matter to Noah if they're not supposed to continue the human race anyway? Why would that be a concern of anybody's? It baffles me. So I'm gonna wrap up this rant because I don't even know if this is gonna be entertaining at all. This is something I've been holding in since I saw the movie. Are there good points to it? Visuals. There are some of the shots and the effects are very, very good to look at. And just some of the audio effects even, because when the flood first starts, there's a shot inside the ark where you just hear everyone who's on the outside of the ark who's dying. You just hear them screaming in agony, and it's really chilling, but it really works. That's one of the few really strong scenes in the movie. But the good moments are few and far between, and in the meantime, you're left with just wooden characters, a plot that seems to just have been thrown together with no effort whatsoever, and you're left with a main character who is just, by all rights, a despicable human being. So, if you haven't guessed already, no, I would not recommend this movie. It has pissed me off more than any movie I've seen in a theater in quite some time. I would urge anyone to just avoid this movie at all costs. It's as I said, it's despicable. I don't understand the praise that this movie is getting, but I'm gonna wrap it up. So that wraps up Real Time Real Talk for March 31st, 2014. Links to the full stories from the headlines and links to the trailers from Trailer Corner, and also a link to my written review of Noah are all in the description box. And I hope you'll come back next week, and if at all, let me know which format you prefer. All sections in one video or spread out, because this was basically just a test to see what I could get away with as far as having them all in one video. So until next time, this is Captain Sandwich. See you next week.